Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar hosted by the Policy Research Institute for South Asia on the subject of geopolitics and the unequal world. Where do developing countries stand? My name is Dr. Mary Hunter, and I'm a Director of Research at PRISA. 2024 was dubbed a historic year for elections, with half the world's population going to the polls. These elections witnessed a number of populist leaders gaining power across the world, and where they did not, populist political parties received a significant amount of support. As I'm sure will be discussed, the increased power of populists and authoritarians will have a significant impact on freedoms, geopolitics, and international cooperation. Our speaker today is Dr. Zeeshan Hashim, the Executive Director of PRISA. Zeeshan has a PhD in economics and finance from Brunel University, and since June 2023, he has been a lecturer in economics at the University of Bedfordshire, as well as a senior finance consultant at various consultancies in London. Prior to this, Zeeshan was a junior lecturer at Brunel University, and with almost 7 years of experience in the think tank industry, Zeeshan's research areas include political economy, public economics, and South Asian integration. Before I hand over to Zeeshan, I will quickly summarize today's format. Zeeshan will have around 30 minutes to present his talk, followed by 20 minutes of Q&A. Please feel free to put questions in the chat box or raise your hand at the end to ask your question. We will then conclude with some closing remarks by Ambassador Khayyam Akbar, who is the coordinator of PRISA's Advisory Council. Zeeshan, please go ahead with your talk.
Thanks, Mary. Thanks for introducing me. And I'm going to share my slides and then I would start. And please confirm you can easily see the slides, right, Mary?
Yes. Yeah, we can see the slides.
So thank you, everyone. As Mary told you, my name is Zeeshan Hashim. I'm Executive Director at PRISA Institute, London. And today we are going to discuss especially about the geopolitics and the polarized world in which we are living now, and how this polarized world is affecting developing countries and including the small countries as well. And there are two main objectives of today's presentation. One is that this is the project, we are working on it, and we want your feedback. So it's not yet complete. So today's event will help us to improve our work. And the second thing is that the PRISA Institutes, we want to also clarify our position in this geopolitical tension around the world, where we stand. And total slides I have, these are around 28, but I will want to finish my presentation within 30 minutes. So some slides I would be fast and some slides I would be more explaining. So what's the problem means today we are going to talk about is that the world is changing, and the global order, which was shaped by the United States and its partners, after the Second World War during the Bretton Woods system, means this global order was shaped by the United States and its partner. And now this global order is being disrupted by the same force, which is the United States. So what's happening is that long-term partners are being overlooked, and it is causing global imbalance. The other problem is that the rule-based world order, which I will explain what was its benefit, is also facing a critical crisis. And we are expecting that if this would happen, it's possible that we will move towards a world in which might is right would be considered as the morality at the international level. And what the Singapore defense minister said, that's making some sense. United States image has changed when the global world order was established by United States. So that time United States was like a liberator. And after that, especially start of this century, United States became great disruptor. And now the United States is like a landlord who is seeking for rent and saying that if you will not give me the rent, I will put tariff on you. So this world we are living, and how it is affecting the geopolitical situation is that, so this is the data from Global BlackRock Geopolitical Risk Indicator. And the idea is that the world was already fragile before the President Trump, and which we will discuss what was the reason. But the thing is that historically the world was not at that level. The fragility level was very low. So, I mean, for example, during the World War One and World War Two, the fragility level was very, very high. The geopolitical risk was very high. And when the Bretton Woods system was established, after that, world was quite stable. You can easily see that. There were some periods like which was causing disruption at the global level, but overall, the geopolitical level was, I mean, geopolitical risk was very, very low. And this was mainly because this is the period when means global world order was established. And after that, means this is the period before the financial crisis, the geopolitical risk was very, very low. And then 9/11 happened and geopolitical risk increased. But after the 9/11, again, it went at the very lowest level. And now we are here, but we are expecting that if it is going, I mean, global world order is going to decay, it's possible that the geopolitical risk will go at the peak like it was before the world order. And so just I'm going to give a brief means introduction about what was the rule-based global world order, or what is the rule-based global world order. It's basically based on established rules, norms, and institutions, and that are leading the relationship or interaction between the nations. So the rules and norms means like every country will means respect the sovereignty of the other country. And at the international level, the sovereignty of the other countries would be respected. Human rights are kind of the rules and norms which would be respected. The peaceful conflict resolution and the free trade was the norm. And the global institutions like United States, World Trade Organization, World Bank, and International Monetary Funds was established because of this rule-based global order. And their main purpose was, for example, United States to maintain peace, World Trade Organization to solve trade disputes, and World Bank was to reduce like global poverty level, and International Monetary Fund. The main purpose was to maintain monetary discipline at the international level. And also, the global world order was based on the principle that for the global level challenge, we need multilateral cooperation. And for that purpose, as we know that the climate change and security threats and all these things at the international level, based on this rule-based global order, we were being solved. It was not perfect, but at least we had some frameworks, and under that framework, it was working. And as I showed you, like it was like the geopolitical risk was very, very low because of this rule-based world order. And now what's happening? It's that the policies and rhetorics of like populists, it's basically disrupting traditional alliances and institutions. As I told you before, like NATO, its survival is on risk. Paris Climate Accord, United States is no longer part of it, and Trans-Pacific relationship is also, every day we read the news that the United States is threatening it. And the American first approach is like, okay, you are going to prioritize national interest over global collaboration. And America was the country, as I discussed, who established this global world order. And America is threatening the sovereignty of the neighboring countries like Canada and Greenland, and the trade war is going to be at its peak level. Yesterday, President Trump also put 25% tariff on, the cars import. And also like the international diplomacy and the values and norms, like means humiliating Zelensky was kind of the things everybody means who believes in international diplomacy. We were surprised and we were sad about it. So what is happening actually, if the global political risk would increase? One is that the geopolitical tensions will increase, and United States. So the tension between major powers would also go up, like United States, Europe, China, and Russia. They will be in the form of fighting each other. Regional conflict would increase, and economic instability and the multilateral institution, as I talked about, means their survival would also be, and also the effectiveness would also be on risk. And that's very, very important. Means if United States is no longer effective, World Trade Organization and IMF is no longer effective, it would cause, means significantly negative impact on the global level of development. And also, if the alternative alliances and blocs are going to be emerged and they are going to be more powerful, it's possible that it could have the political and economic freedom, negative effect on political and economic freedom all over the world. And the consequences, the other thing is that the United States was providing, like, NATO was providing the security guarantee, so there was no benefit of having nuclear weapons. But now everybody is saying that if Japan had nuclear weapon, Japan was more safe. So Japan trusted United States security guarantee, and everybody is saying that if Ukraine would not give up, like, its a nuclear program. So it's possible that now the Ukraine was in a better situation against the Russia. So now the benefit of having nuclear weapon is increasing over the period of time. And the cybersecurity threats are increasing. And it's also, we are expecting that the migration crisis and human rights violations are would increase. And similarly, in last week, you have observed that even in United States, human rights violations are at the peak level. And the negative effect of this, we could also feel like that at the global level, democratic values would be in the declining. And we are already facing the third wave of, you can say, the democratic decline globally. So this means would cause also further decline. So now the problem in today's discussion, we are going to discuss what's the future of the small countries. And here I'm going to use the term small countries for both kind of the countries, like the countries whose economic size is small, like the developing countries, or the countries whose population is small, because in terms of effect of the geopolitical situation on whether you are a developing country or your population is small, quite same. And the larger countries are those countries whose economic size is big, like the developed countries, or whose population is big, like India, for example. So the change in the geopolitical situation is largely in favor of the larger countries, but it's not in favor of the small country. How this is the situation I'm going to discuss with it. So the first problem is coming from industrial policy. The world is becoming more protectionist. And we are talking all about the industrial policy and the discussion, that it was initially started by Donny Roderick, and the people like Roderick and others, now they are unhappy that, so they were wanted the industrial policy to protect some industries, but now they're unhappy that the populists took this like narrative and they are going to protect every industry in the country in the way that they are going to deglobalize the world economy. And the industrial policies are basically the state-led government programs, such as the trade protection subsidies or tax incentive and R&D funding. So the basic objective is to protect the local economy and also going against the globalization. And why this is causing the problem? Before that, I want to discuss about why the globalization is very, very important, not only for small countries, it's also important for the large countries. So here we see this is the history of the globalization, and we can see that so globalization was at like quite peak start of the 19th century, start of the 20th century, last century, and then because of the World War II, it declined. And after the world order was established, it went increasing, and now it's at the peak level. But in the last 5-7 years, especially after the Great Depression, especially after the financial crisis 2007-8, so it is kind of stagnated. It's not like increasing at the same level it was before you can say that the financial crisis. So but the globalization was very, very beneficial for everyone in this planet. On this planet, especially the poor people. So now you can see that in 1990, or if I go, for example, the time before the world order was established, so that time the poverty level, the global poverty level was more than 70%. So according to some estimates, it was around 80%. And now means it is around 7%, or according to some estimates, 9%. And the data I have provided with excluding China and excluding India, and still we feel like it's around 8% or 9%. And also, according to some estimates, it's 7%. So this is the lowest level of the poverty. And you know that when the globalization was declined or stagnated, so the decline in the poverty level is also stagnated. So the other thing is that it was not only good for the poor people, the globalization was also good for the poor countries or developing countries. So you could see that on the x-axis we have the GDP per capita in 1950, and the GDP per capita on the y-axis we have at means it is the GDP per capita in 2016 based on the available data. And you can easily see that only there are few countries means who became poor after 1950. There are just few, one, two, three, means Afghanistan. And these are the countries which are facing civil war or very bad kind of the security problems. But the other countries, they became richer with compared to their level in 1950. And there are many countries who became like the richer 10 times, 15 times, 30 times, and at the different levels as well. So overall, so you can say that the global average is the world has become richer around 4.4 times, and a majority of countries lies between 4 to 10. So this is very, very interesting. So then the problem is that what actually has happened. The other thing is that the globalization was also not bad for the rich countries. So you can see that this is the data from 1990 and to 2022, and you can see that so the rich countries are also growing, and you would be surprised that the United States has become more richer with compared to 1990. And the United States is the populism, the economic populism in the United States is also at the very high level. So this is surprising. And the Germany and other countries also became richer with compared to their 1990 level. The problem happens is that, okay, everybody was getting richer. So the benefit of being rich means that your shares in the global pie decline. So this is the problem, the first. So for example, if there were few countries richer and all others were poor, so the world was in advantage of the richer countries. But what has happened? So the richer countries also became richer. So the poor countries also became richer. So now the global economic landscape changed. And that causes, to some extent, the populism, which is against the global world order, which I'm going to discuss more. So here you can see that. So this is the China. And with the passage of time, China became means the at the base of purchasing power parity. So you can say that the largest economy, and this is, for example, the European Union. European Union is declining in its shares at the global level, and the United States is also declining and the United States is getting richer, but at the global level, when the pie became bigger and other people also take part in the pie, so the shares in the global GDP declined. And also you could see that the India, it's also increasing. And the trajectory is increasing, China trajectory is increasing, but European Union and means you can say that the United States, the trajectory is declining. And this is the percentage of the global GDP. It's not the PPP, the growth per country. So this has happened. So the power of the European Union and the power of United States at the global level declined. And the other graph also shows that, so this is the advanced rich countries. So in 1980, So major at G7 was like 50% of the global GDP, and now the G7 has around 20% or 25%. And this is the emerging and developing Asia is increasing with the passage of time. And also you could see that the emerging markets and developing economies are also growing super fast, and their share in the global GDP is also increasing. So this is changing, this is making the world, we can say that the polarized in terms of the economic power. And the other advanced economies are still at the same level where they were before. So actually what has happened is that what the J.D. Vance said, and that's the cruel truth kind of the thing. And I was surprised how did he said that. He said that the idea of the globalization was that the rich countries would move further up the value chain while the poor countries kept making the simpler things. So was the idea which, according to the populists, means was in their favor. But the globalization didn't work in that way. And when the Bretton Woods system was established, and that time economists and political economists were also arguing that, and means there are many people today in this presentation know that the idea of the economic convergence in which like the richer countries will grow at very low level and the poor countries will grow at the higher level, and eventually they would converge. That's very old idea, and economists and political economists expected that the globalization will cause all these things, and the globalization will go in advantage of the poor countries, and eventually there would be convergence. So what would have happened, like this reality should be accepted at the international level, and the share of the, you can say, emerging and developing countries must be accepted in the global geopolitical situation, and they should get like their share in the power as well. Not only the G7 or the G8 countries are being or are monopolizing the international political system. So, but actually, this is not going to happen. And so this was the one reason. Uh, One person's mic is on. Can you please put it off? So the problem is that, so this change in the globalization and the effect of the globalization is also causing the rise of populism. So the one problem is that the globalization never been means benign to the West in terms of keeping the power at the global level, political power at the global level. The other thing is that the populists are taking this issue at the political level, and they are causing, you can say, the populist narrative. So the populism is also a major factor contributing to the global geopolitical shift, and this is, you can see that with the passage of time, global populism is increasing in the West, and if it would keep increasing, that would be a major contributing factor to the global geopolitical shift. So what the poor countries are facing, the problem in this situation is that, so although the developing countries have also experienced growth, but still you can say their dependence on globalization is very, very high. And the reason is that their size is small. They can't produce everything what they need or consume. So for example, United States, or for example, India, a majority of things India or United States, and including China, they are producing, they can consume at the local level in their national economy. But if you are a small country, you can't produce everything what you need. And also your dependence on the export is also very high in terms of finding a new market, and that would also impact on their growth rate. So their dependence on export and import is high, making them more connected to the global economy. And at the same time, they're more vulnerable to the risk associated with globalization. And means their bargaining power in the global economy is very, very low. And at that situation, they want the globalization. And And this is one example I'm giving, means, for example, why the developing countries need globalization is that still we believe that in the last century, the highly successful growth model was the export-led growth model. And many countries like the South Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Singapore, they developed basically because of export-led growth model. Even China and Japan and Germany was developed. So they were producing a lot and then they were selling at the global level, and that made them richer. But with the passage of time, if that means global world order is kind of protectionist, or the global world order is going to decay, and means the trade is no more free trade, and the protectionism is in policy at every country level. So in that way, many countries who are struggling and who are trying to find a growth model through their export, they would not be able to follow this path. So for example, Bangladesh is trying to become means like Bangladesh is trying to adopt export-led growth model. Vietnam is trying to do, and surprisingly, Vietnam is being another success story with the passage of time, and that's also the export-led growth model. So if trade war starts, it would not be possible for the smaller countries to become rich in that way. And the second challenge the developing countries are facing is that the world is becoming more and more hostile. And in this hostility, who is powerful is not going to accept that the weaker has the equal right. So the sovereignty is not going to be accepted as a means, you can say, that the value at the global level. So for example, United States is targeting Canada and Greenland, and it's like means 10 years before, who could believe that? But now it's the politics of every day. And the way Russia and China, they are treating their neighboring countries, and the China, you knew that the problem with the smaller countries, they already means, for example, the Chinese problem with, for example, with Tibet, so they have already taken it, and how the China's influence in the neighboring countries means is also like kind of threatening them. And similarly, means Russia, you already know that after every 4 years, there is a war and taking one country. So this is, and if the global world order go declining, so this would be an advantage of like the bigger countries like Russia, China, and even United States, and also in the region, in the South Asia, the India as well, because nobody would accept that the smaller have the same rights like the larger country. So now the smaller countries are struggling to find alternative, and they want to diversify their geopolitical and economic risk. And also it's the competition, and you can say rivalry between the larger nations is also increasing. So smaller countries are trying to find their partner. They could feel like, okay, if we join Russia, whether we would be safe. If we join China, whether we would be safe. If we find United States power, whether we would be saved. And every country is not going to give the signal like you would be saved, because every larger country is saying that we want rent from you. And if you will give rent, so then you could be safe. So now, because the PRISA is highly focused on South Asia, so if we are going to talk about what's happening means in South Asia, changing the geopolitical risk, one thing is that the remittances dependence in South Asia is very, very high. Foreign aid dependence is very high. South Asia's regional trade is very low. So it's around 5%, but South Asia is depending a lot in terms of export dependence on the developed Western countries. Still, United States and European Union is the biggest export market for the South Asian countries. And the US and European Unions are balancing the effect of China and India in the region as well. And the political and economic freedom level in the region is already low. And the smaller countries like Nepal and Bhutan, they are more in disadvantage if geopolitical crisis starts. So if, for example, in the new world, or for example, developed countries, if the populism is going to win in future, and the migration, international migration, is no longer, you can say, a robust source of remittances for the, you can, South Asian countries. So South Asian countries would face a lot of problems, just like I'm going to show. So you could see that around 10% is the foreign aid these countries are receiving. And if foreign aid is foreign aid is going to be stopped, and which is more likely it would stop. Even, I mean, for example, United States already stopped the foreign aid, and the European Union is transferring more and more money towards, the defense. So we are expecting that the foreign aid would be at the very lower level. And you could see that a majority of countries, many countries in the region, their foreign aid dependence is more than 5%. So some are around 10%, and some countries were like Afghanistan it's around 15%. So the other thing is that so their dependence on means you can say the global world order is very, very high. And the other thing, if we look at the remittances, like the money, the migrants they are sending to their home countries, and you could see like the South Asians are also getting on average around 8 to 10%. So Nepal is 25%, and this is the official, and also the Pakistan and Sri Lanka. So this is official because non-official channel are also very active. So that's why, according to many estimates, like for example, 5% and 10% more uh, means you can say that these countries are receiving. So Nepal's informal remittances are at very higher level, and Pakistan and Sri Lanka also at the higher level. So if we even believe on the official statistics, we could see that the dependence is very, very high. So, so this makes South Asia highly vulnerable to the change in the geopolitical situation, and especially change in the world order. And so what's the future? Is the populist wave reversible? Because my opinion is that if populist wave go goes reversed, it's possible that the means you can say the global world order would be restored in future. But if the populist wave is going to be increased with the passage of time, so then you can say the geopolitical risk will also increase, and there would be no stability in the global world order. So this is from my research, means it is published. It's going to be it's accepted for the European Journal of Political Economy, and it would be published within 1 or 2 months because it's in the publication phase. And means I was working on the data and I realized that, and it's the theory I'm also working on with Jan Fiddermog, like the political ideas are also like a wave. They are like the fashion. You could see like feel like you can say sometimes at the global level where the democracies are. So sometimes the center, sorry, right is winning, sometimes left is winning. So this is left is winning, and the right is declining. And here, right is increasing. Now that we are living in the world in which rightists are more strong and leftists are weak, and the centrists are at the very lowest level. So the center we always need. There's a very great book we need to read. It's the why that we need the center. So if this theory is like acceptable, and which is like the ideas are like fashion, and with the passage of time their time is like gone, so we are also expecting that this is the populist wave, and after some time when it goes with test of the time, it will go declining, and the world would, the West especially, would back to the, you can say, the center, or center right, or center left. So there's a still hope. So at the end, so these are my 2 slides at the end. So what our report is going to suggest to the small and developing countries, the first thing is that they should embrace realism, so that they are not living in an idealistic world. And they need to find new partners and find synergy and diversification. And they need to find the partner, like, for example, partner, they could be partners to each other, or they could find the partner, for example, European Union, who is still like kind of not hostile to the small country. They could find partner, and they could find synergy in it. And the European Union is also trying to make, like, if United States is not going to take responsibility of the world order, at least they could you contribute in that way, even though they are trying very hard to protect themselves. I mean, the European Union as a one region, but they could be a good partner for the small countries, because European Union still holds like the democracy as a means, so the main value. of their, you can say, the political and economic narrative. And the second thing, I mean, this PRISA is like promoting since its establishment is that the regional integration in South Asia for the small countries, it's very, very important because the blocks makes you bigger and your collective bargaining power increase. And it also helps the countries to trade with each other in your bloc, and then you can gain your competitive advantage. So just like European Union means all these countries in the European Union, these are very small countries, but when they became one bloc, so their power increased, collective power increased. And so South Asia could take European Union as an example, or also the ASEAN as an example. But European Union could be a good example because European Union provides like the integration at the political, economic, and social level as well. And they should raise their voice for a rule-based international world order, and that's their need. And if they will go for its advocacy, so they would be an advantage. And also whether it's not useful to suggest larger countries because they at the current level they are not listening anyone, is that they need to understand the perspective and vulnerabilities of small countries, and the real power comes from soft power. So they should work on, like, they should have norms, values, and mutual respect, and they should respect the interest and civil society connections as well. And all these things, I mean, in the report we will also mention, even though there's less likelihood that the larger countries would take notice. But our report is more targeting small and developing countries and South Asia, like, except India. India is a big country in the region, but the South Asia is means made up of small and developing countries. So that's my presentation. Hope it was not boring.